No, I can't, it won't. It will. It simply will not find my earphones.
That's nonsense.
So what I will have to do. Well, can we just do it without on the intro and see how it sounds?
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, all right. Let's have a go.
It's only the input, not the output.
No. I think people know you're inept at technology. We're recording, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I heard the
Sorry. Oh, anyway, how are you?
Hello.
Hello.
How am I? Did you say?
Yeah, got to ask you that. Start with formalities. Get those out the way.
I was just so shocked you are. Good. I'm good, mate. Good.
Yeah. Okay.
Been doing a little act.
Pleased for you. So Gary's currently preparing for a stand-up comedy routine competition.
Student competition.
The Chortle Student Comedy Awards. He'll be the oldest student amongst his pool of
the oldest and the worst. Sorry, I mean best. Yeah.
I think it stands in your favour, though, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You do know the quality doesn't stand for itself. Do you
want to share a joke now, or
no? Do not. Known you 10 years, mate. You know.
Yeah.
You know I don't. Oh, do you know this is our 10th year?
What, doing podcasting?
Knowing each other. Knowing each other.
Oh, yeah. We should do something special, shouldn't we? Like
2012. I remember the Olympics.
You could take me out for a meal or something. You could.
Well, all right. I'll just send you some money if you need it. And you can...
Oh, can you do that? I need to get paid. Anyway, this is the Trout Spinners podcast with your friends Miles Pennell and Gary Forrestal. It's a
special day. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
It's all right. No,
special day because it's not a normal show day. Alert! If you do not like when we don't do a normal show, then tune out now because this is an interview.
Oh, who are we interviewing?
Steve Taylor.
Who's Steve Taylor, Gary?
Well, you'll find out, won't you, if you listen to the show? That's teasing them. See, Steve Taylor was a DJ basically back in the time when Gervais was a DJ at Xfm, so they knew each other. He even appeared on one of the shows. If you're an Uber fan, if you know all the shows forensically, you may remember Steve Taylor. Miles just told me it was series 1, episode 7. He comes into the studio and they talk to him. So that's who we're interviewing today.
Yeah. He was 10 years during XFM. He was there during the early days. He obviously worked with Ricky, Steve and Carl, so very much looking forward to finding out. He's called the man with the knowledge. He's a bit of a muso, so looking forward to getting his opinions on both music and working in radio more generally.
Sorry, are you reading this? Sounds a lot like you're reading.
I'm not on this time. Anyway, how my week's been? Good. Cheers, Gary, for asking. Don't know what
that's so like you. It's not even a joke. He does that normally. I of course I was going to ask. Well, Miles, let me just come in and say, how are you doing?
Yeah,
and that is a rhetorical question. I don't want a full answer.
3 anecdotes. Anecdote 1. Saw a man eat a whole orange on the tube. He sat down. He had his mask on. He had a freshly peeled, I think it was a satsuma, the humble satsuma. And he didn't segment it out. He just whacked it all in one.
Well, I guess when you're in the tube, so what I do is I don't just rip off the skin. I get in the middle, like a packet of cigarettes, and it's got that little bit, and you little strip round. And then I take off the top and the bottom sort of halves, and they're not halves because they've got a bit strip. And then I put them both down, and then I split the satsuma into halves, and I put one half. There's always a bigger and a smaller one, so I put the smaller where if I've got as I start eating, I put into the smaller one, and the bigger where I haven't ate yet, I put that in the bigger one. Then I've got two little plates for satsumas, I swap them over sometimes, and then that's just that will catch on. If people say Gary Forrestal did that, and then I'll be like, Satsuma's up 91%.
I thought what you were going to say is when I open the packet of cigarettes, I tip them up and I just pop them all in my mouth at the same time.
That's cigarettes, yeah. No, but Satsuma's, that is a good little tip. You can get two little cups, 2 little plates.
Still talking about Satsumas.
It's not practical. Yeah, well, you brought it up.
Anecdote number 2.
Do that on the tube, so I would eat it in whole. So that's
would
fine.
You?
I just like the pips, maybe if the pips have them.
Anecdote number 2. Valentine's Day is approaching. Gary, what are you more sad about? The fact that you don't have to spend money on...
It never works, that anecdote, because he said you should say, well, are you happier at that, or are you sad are you happy? It didn't work the way he said it. I always felt like, I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy. Get a pizza.
Talk about
They do special pizza deals on that day, so I guess it's eat the pizzas myself.
How was the chicken Big Mac, by the way? Gary sent me a text earlier in the week and he said, I'm so excited, can't wait to place this order and try the new chicken Big Mac.
Tell you what I said. Incidentally, I will be absolutely destroying a chicken Big Mac tomorrow. So much so that it will die a second time as I devour with the mania of a savage, unsocialized beast of a man getting chipped too.
And that's just one of his jokes that he's doing tonight on the Chortle Student Comedy Awards.
Yeah, I'm going to be getting to go to Australia. No, chicken Big Mac. Well, you asked me how chicken. It was a bit disappointing. The chicken kind of, as I bit into the chicken once, it kind of slid. Like it was like a shiny. Felt like. Oh. Like it was a mass, like little, it's hard to explain. It didn't feel like a chicken texture should be.
You did a good description when you were talking about the Satsuma, so I was expecting a more eloquent response.
Well, yeah, so far I've given the two pretty bloody eloquent responses to your anecdotes. The chicken Big Mac, yeah, disappointing. I wouldn't go there again, get a normal Big Mac, or as they're doing at the moment, a double Big Mac with 4 patties. Do
you know what, though? Never got it with the Big Mac. Why are you just bulking that shit out with bread? Is that the impressive thing about it? Is that the popular thing? Is the bread?
No, they don't. No, I don't know. It's the sauce, I think. The sauce, something about the sauce.
But they just sell the sauce then. If that's the special part of it, just say, I can buy a vat of sauce. Do you know the sauce I want to buy the most? Do you know, like a crappy kebab takeaway shop, right? But the curry sauce, and it's always the same. Well, it's usually the same in every single kebab house you go in. The chili sauce, mate.
No, I don't. See, you like chili sauce. You like chili crisps when we're together. I don't really.
Yeah.
The sauce I like is tartar sauce. A really good tartar sauce.
Yeah, that's nice.
That was sauce time on every week.
Also, anecdote number 3. So that was 2. The third one is I went to karaoke last night, Gary. I went to a chain of Lucky Voice, which was in Soho, London. And we had 2 hours booked.
It's like when your wife sort of, or your husband sort of kills 5 prostitutes. What? You had no idea. You didn't know him. You thought you knew him, but you didn't know him. He was a killer. Because it's like you with this singing. Because you're doing the choir. Now you do. I know you do like a bit of karaoke, actually, with your sister. But I'm surprised you went to karaoke. And
why?
What did you sing?
Mate, did I sing? I took the house down. If there was an audience there, I would have got a raving applause, a standing ovation, and roses thrown at me.
Of lunchtime,
of course.
What did you sing? Oasis?
No. Do you know what? Oasis never came up because I feel like I sing them too much anyway. But I take it as an opportunity to exercise my West End wings. And there was one time I was singing with my friend.
He's a darling, Miles. You know, he's known.
I was singing with my friend. She can actually sing. She's done like music videos and stuff. So I was singing with her, and they had Dear Evan Hansen on there, and Les Miserables and Moulin Rouge, we were sort of singing it together. And as we were singing, we were like looking at each other's eyes, like we know what bit's coming up next, and going into it. And it was just, I felt like I was flying.
Is she pregnant now, or did anything happen?
No. It was all safe, PC fun. But
what was that song like? Why do birds?
Carpenters.
I can imagine you singing that.
It was pretty much like we were like Karen and the brother and one extra one, but I put him into the.
Never. I do Karen. I do the drummer, and I do. That was okay. So that was that's good. Well, we've got rid of our audience now, so they've got enough. Progressively, so we can just interview Steve without,
We'll do that, and then when we come back at the end, we've got a little bit of XFM in the community for you, and I think that's it. That will take us up, won't it?
Yeah, enjoy. So, Mars, we have a very special guest with us today. Can you guess who it is?
I can, because I know.
Oh, you do know, actually. Let me tell you, he is variously a DJ, a professor, a lecturer, a dean of Northampton University. He's an author.
Well, used to be.
He used to be. Still, that's
good start.
Still impressive. He is the man with the knowledge. He is Steve Taylor. Ooh.
It's like Steve Wright, isn't it?
I was going to say it all went a little bit kind of Steve Wright and the Afternoon Gang or whatever they were called for a moment there.
He's my.
Do you like factoids? Do you like?
I love a factoid. I can't get enough of them.
Right, no, Steve, seriously, thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it. And you've had a fascinating career, so we would like to sort of pick your brains a bit. And I need to ask a question at that point. Yeah, it's
good start.
Let's say you're at the moment, Steve, as Ryan said, you are dean of.
I used to be dean at Northampton University. I'm now dean at Warwickshire College University Centre. So I've worked at about 3 different universities, basically.
Right.
So
And
I was in West London when I did XFM, and I kind of held down 2 things simultaneously. And then I went to Northampton, and now I'm in Warwickshire, which is kind of where I live, really.
But we should say you did work kind of with Steve, Ricky and Carl, not directly necessarily, but you were actually on one of the shows. You were in the studios because you worked for XFM 1998 to 2008. Am I right about that?
Sounds,
roughly
I think so.
That. So just wondered, how did you get into radio in the beginning, and what got you into it?
That's an interesting story, actually. I'm glad you asked me that one, because it's one of the stories I like to tell.
Oh, cool.
There may be others later on that I don't like to tell, and I'll suddenly go very quiet. No, this one, when I was a youngster, I used to, this is up in Coventry, I used to DJ, and I got into doing quizzes. And I used to present quizzes, and there was this particular sort of student-based pub in Coventry called the Sir Colin Campbell, which in its day was legendary. It used to have bands on it, that kind of stuff. In fact, I started putting bands on there at one point. That's another story. So I used to do this quiz, and one night there's a kind of a guy hanging around at the bar who wouldn't normally be there, and he's knocking them back. And at the end of the night, I kind of just chatting to him, sort of packing away, and he went, "So it's quite good today." I thought it was all right. I said, "Well, thanks very much." Trying to kind of back away, and he said, I work on the radio, and I said, "Oh, do you?" And I thought, I'm interested now. And he was a guy called Steve, and I can't remember his surname, which is probably quite handy because it's probably the first thing I'll say today, which is possibly potentially libelous. But anyway, so he essentially said, no, he says, work on radio. I work on a station called Radio Harmony. And Radio Harmony was what was called an incremental community radio station in Coventry.
Right.
So this is going back to 1994, 5, something like that. So anyway, so he said this, man, and I said, "Oh, well, I've been interested in radio. It'd be good to know." He said, "Well, do you want to come down and see that?" I said, "Yeah, of course I do." He said, "Okay, well, here's my number." So anyway, the next day I thought, I'll phone this guy. I'll phone him. So I phoned this fella up and said, "When can I come down?" He said, "Oh, a bit of a change of plan, mate." He said, "Sorry about that." He said, I'm leaving town," which, to this day sounds a bit suspicious.
I
don't know. All I know is that
murders in that part
he'd been knocking back the drinks. I see him just about, and so I'm leaving. So I went, "Oh, okay. Well, thanks anyway. Bye." And then I came off the phone and I thought, well, hang on a second. If he's leaving, there must be a gap. Yeah. So I phoned the station. I phoned the station manager, and I said, "So I was talking to your bloke, blah blah blah, Steve, thingy," and he thought I was quite good. Is there a show going? So this guy says, "Well, come down and see us. Bring down a demo tape." So I thought, okay, this is going somewhere. What's a demo tape? So I went sort of back home and kind of, set up the turntables and a kind of a recording setup and stuff. Not in any way in the league of what we're using today now, where we can just kind of click on a button and we've got a whole thing going on. So I kind of put together what I thought was a demo tape, some links, bit of music and that kind of stuff. Went down to Radio Harmony in Coventry, spoke to the guy who was the managing director, a guy called Suresh Joshi, talking to him, and had to listen to the tape, and he said, "Yeah, that sounds okay. Do you want to start tonight?"
Oh my God.
That was literally it. Yeah. So I said, yeah.
That must have been a bloody good demo tape, I must say.
I can only imagine the quality. No, I suspect it was more to do with the fact that it was kind of like, I've got nobody to cover that slot. He'll do. So essentially, so I literally went in, watched what they were doing. They said, come down tonight. The guy who'll be on before you is a guy called Kenny B. Kenny B does the reggae show, and what I was doing was the overnight. So the reggae show was on, I don't know, till about 11 o'clock or something, or midnight, and then I was on after that. So I went in. He said, "Oh, Kenny will show you the desk and how it works and everything." So I went down, saw Kenny earlier on. Kenny wasn't really that interested in showing me the desk. I mean, he's a lovely bloke, but he was doing his reggae show. Do you know what I mean? He had a certain vibe in the studio. There was a certain vibe, a certain scent, a certain thing. And so essentially, so he finishes, and I'm kind of thinking, well, this has got to just be like DJing, hasn't it, with your little disco equipment. So I went and I started the show, and I started with Unfinished Sympathy, by Massive Attack, because I loved
Great
the
song.
intro, that kind of the the album version has got that fantastic little kind of intro.
Yeah.
Absolutely superb. So so I started with that, came out of the news, started with that. Then I played the Four Tops Still Water, because the thing about
a vibe change from reggae.
But I tried it out and I thought, yeah, that'll fade out and then this will fade in, and then just carried on from there. So I never got any proper training in doing radio. The thing about community radio station is that it was a really, really radical one, actually, Harmony, because it was multilingual. So during the day, they'd actually have shows that were in Hindi, they're actually Indian language shows during the day with English language shows interspersed. And then I got to do these overnights. And after, I don't know, a few months, a year or something like that, I managed to kind of get my own show where I was able to play whatever I wanted. And that then ultimately kind of turned into a show called The Shift, which was an indie and alternative show. The station got bought out by another company. And I got a bit of radio training then when the new company came along. And I then did an alternative radio show for quite 2-3 years or something like that. Late on a Sunday night, got involved with the kind of the live scene in Coventry, putting some bands on, doing Battle of the Bands type things. And then when XFM started, I thought, I want to go there. And so, got in touch and sent another demo tape, which had a bit more knowledge of at that point, and got the gig on XFM.
That's amazing. Wow, that's amazing. You cut your teeth on obviously those community stations, which is like a lot of DJs start that way, don't they? I think like Greg James, like Chris Moyles, I think a lot of people start that way, don't they? Yeah. Did you just literally get in touch with XFM, or did you have any talks?
No. So the way the XFM thing worked is that I wasn't in London. Obviously, I was up in Coventry. I was at university. I was being a student. I wasn't really that aware of all the kind of the prehistory of it. That's where you need to speak to John Kennedy for all of that stuff. But essentially, I was aware of its existence. I came down to London, was driving around, and was listening to it and thinking, this is fantastic. I thought I'd get in touch with them. This would have been sort of tail end October 97, shortly after they'd gone on air and all of that kind of thing. So got in touch with them and was booked to have a phone call with Fraser, Fraser, who's the head of music there. And I remember speaking to him, phoning him from Oxford. I remember I went to kind of like a music event in Oxford or something. I remember phoning him from a phone box there, and they said, we like the tape, we like what you're doing, we'd like you to come and do a show for us. And then they gave me the 7 till 9 slot, Monday to Thursday, and Saturday 6 till 10. So I was doing Monday to Thursday 7 till 9, Saturday 6 till 10. And afterwards, there was something that got published or something like that, talking about it was like a DJ of the week type thing they used to do on XFM. This is when a few years later on, and it was kind of like, we'll do a bit of a profile. And they'd done a bit, this week Steve Taylor, they'd done all the better people. And it's all we're scraping about Steve Taylor. And I remember it said something about the XFM management team or something said, we were driving around and we heard this guy on air and we thought he sounds good. And so I thought, that's interesting. I didn't know that bit. So I think when I contacted them, they sort of already knew my show because I think they'd heard it. Now, there was another guy in XFM called Mark Sheldon, who was in Derby, and he was doing a similar thing to me in Derby, doing like his own alternative show. And I think both myself and Mark, and possibly there were a couple of others, were doing music shows around the country. And I think the XFM cats knew who they were looking for. They knew they had the London lot, and I suppose they thought there's a few of these kind of shows going on out in the provinces. And so if they ever get in touch, maybe we'll be interested. So so I can't get the impression that when I sent the thing down there, they kind of, because there weren't many. You're talking mid-90s, even though it was kind of, you got the whole Britpop thing had gone off and all that kind of thing. There still weren't many shows on radio where you would hear. I mean, God, I remember Kicks 96 allowing me to play Radiohead on a Saturday afternoon when I covered a Saturday afternoon show. When the Bends came out, I played just on air. Kicks 96 used to be played kind of all in the shopping, all the shops around Coventry. And I used to think to myself, hey, I'm sitting here playing Radiohead at the shoppers of Coventry when they're used to hearing pap. Whatever, I don't know, pop music of some description that was quite horrid. So so there was not a lot of sound. So so when XFM started, I think it was probably quite easy to think, well, we know that there's other people around the country, but there's not many of them. So had there been more talented people than me out there, I would never have gotten to XFM. It's just that there was only a few of us.
It sounds like you've got that sort of that hunger, though, kind of married quite nicely with the ethos and philosophy of the station, being such a muso as you clearly are, and coming from, just literally just being jumped straight into the deep end at radio, it kind of worked quite nicely with the way XFM was run. Certainly when I never listened to the station live, but obviously we're big fans of the Ricky, Steve and Carl show, but you get a sense that it was all very kind of DIY, homemade,
the
just
fact that you
fun
didn't
and a bit
have the
anarchic.
fact you didn't have that professional training back when you started on the community radio, I can imagine wasn't as an issue at all to XFM. They just the one is that this guy's a quality guy, he can talk, he's good, he's got a great taste in music. That's all they're into. They didn't care about the technical skills. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've thought about this because I started teaching radio as well, and these kind of things, you know, and I did it. So for me, and I also wrote about it. So I did a kind of a chapter in an academic book and those kind of things, you know, so around radio. But yeah, it sort of. I mean, I think that I'd been doing talking with a microphone out in pubs and stuff for a few years, and I'll say even putting together quizzes and those kind of things was great because you had to interact with an audience in a pub, you know, so you're doing little, and of course it was student type pubs, you know, you had like a good laugh and it could be a little bit kind of close to the bone and that kind of stuff. So that was a good grounding. But yeah, you're right, when I got to community radio thing, I sort of became self-taught, you know. I kind of, you know, when Radio Harmony got bought out by this station Kix 96, there was a guy there called Graham Torrington who was the program controller. Now Graham, I think he's still doing radio probably, I think. He came in as part of the whole kind of Kix 96 kind of team, if you like, and that he was the first person to sit down with me and do an air check, you know, because an air check used to be every time you open the microphone in the studio it would start a cassette recording, so you didn't get all of the music in between, you just got the time when the mic was open. And I remember him sitting there and he was going through it, and I remember the very first thing he did to me, he said, okay, so you've come out of the news there, and I remember the track I was playing, Aztec Camera, Somewhere in My Heart, you know, it's got that dun, 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 really great intro, you know. And I thought I'd kind of, you know, come off the back of the news, top of the hour imager into that track, and he said, oh, you know, you could drive a bus through that, Steve. You know, you need to be sharp, you need to be tighter. So he'd kind of do that stuff. And then he'd say, you know, well, when you're doing a link, you know, you should be doing like 30, 40-second link tops or something like that. You should be making sure to say the name of the station every single time, get a local reference in. You know, it's 13 degrees on the Coventry Ring Road. You know, Boots the Chemist is rocking today, you know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, he did all this stuff with me, and it was great because what happened was I started off with this kind of just kind of flexible kind of, yeah, it's me, I'm doing it like I'm doing it in a pub and that kind of stuff. And I gradually got the professional bit kind of built into me. Now, interestingly, when I got to XFM, I did my first show on a Saturday afternoon, and I was leaving the building at the end of the show thinking, I think that's gone okay. 4-hour show, fantastic. I'm here, I'm in London, yay! And I was walking out, and we used to be on the sort of second floor, I think, in the Charlotte Street building. And I walked down some stairs anyway, and on the next floor down was the office of Sammy Jacob. Yeah, Sammy Jacob was the managing director. Yeah. At this point, let's not do any libelous stuff.
What you were saying about him off air, I could not believe what you were saying about him off air. Let me just say, he did that in a tank of fish as well.
With the shark and the kind of the television out the window, Oh no, sorry, that was Led Zeppelin. Yeah, no, but it was.
I'm sorry, Sammy Jacobs.
No, he's great. He was great, Sammy. I mean, absolutely fantastic. I mean, absolute kind of visionary with what he did. But so he's sitting there. So I'm walking past the office, and I'm thinking, well, there's Sammy. He's given me the job. He's in. So I kind of, you know, gently kind of pushed the door open, and he's sitting behind this big desk in front of the window. Sammy, how did that go? And he kind of looked like I was kind of bothering him, you know, and he sort of said, well, he said, no, that was fine, Steve. I thought, well, that's not bad. He said, just one thing. He said, just, because the strap line was London's only alternative, which I loved as a strap line. It was the greatest strap line in the world. And he said, just stop saying that every link. Just stop saying it every link. And I thought, hang on, that's the opposite. That's the opposite advice I've been given by Graham Torrington in corporate radio land. Because, you know, there it was all about the brand. And for Sammy, it was like, no, the brand is, if people are listening, they're listening because they already know who we are. Don't keep telling them, because that just irritates them. Yeah. So for him, it was always the music is first. The station, I suppose, is second, as like as a culture, as a community thing, and the presenter was third. You know, that was the way. It didn't mean that he didn't want presenters' personality, but what he didn't want is he didn't want that whole smashy and nicey. You know, dare I say it? I don't think Sammy would have taken on Chris Moyles in a million years. No. Who of course is at Radio X now, because Chris Moyles would have been the antithesis. of everything that Sammy wanted, you know.
Chris today is a little bit, he's a bit more mellow. I think he's a bit more natural sounding. But yeah, I know what you mean back then with Comedy Dave and in those days. But you could obviously talk a good game. You could talk. That's the bit that's hard to teach or impossible to teach. You just needed to add the technical skills, you know, and you eventually got that. But I get the sense that although it was for the station, music was important. Obviously, with the Ricky Gervais show, sort of the chat became important. But to you personally, even if that hadn't been the ethos of the station, music is very, very important to you in your life and career. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely, yeah. Always, you know, music down the line, and I've kind of and I go through those phases. Everybody goes through as they grow up, you know. And so I was a goth when I was 17 or whatever. But really, even though I was a goth, I secretly really liked disco. You know, it was kind of, that was the stuff I really, and I liked the soft rock. And, you know, I was a big fan of, you know, of Fleetwood Mac and Steely Dan and the Eagles. So, you know, I'll Steely Dan at the gods. Steely Dan have solved popular music. They did it in 1977 with the AJR album, and nobody really has had to do anything since then because it was solved by the Dan. In 77.
That's the best comment. Miles, clip that. We're going to play that in the episode, somewhere in the episode. I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was, you know, whatever the problem was with popular music, they solved it.
They solved it.
But essentially, yeah, I mean, I loved all that West Coast soft rock, really uncool, which now gets called yacht rock today, doesn't it? You know, and sort of has got a coolness about it. I loved disco. I loved a bit of everything, really. The only stuff I never liked, I didn't like stuff that was felt like you kind of knew what the idea was. You know, it was kind of like it was just cashing in on something. So I didn't care what the genre was. I loved reggae as well. I loved all of that. Yeah. So yeah, I've always loved that. So getting to XFM was brilliant because that original XFM station, although people tend to think of it as being indie and Britpop and all those kind of things, actually the people who work there, they love some of that stuff as well. But really, the music taste, you know, the range of music taste was huge, you know, just like it was when you worked in a record store. Because people who are into music don't really care about the genres, and they don't really care about the haircuts and the record label. You know, they just want good music, which has kind of got something in it, you know, that is real and kind of moves you in some way. So
absolutely. Did you have autonomy? Did you have control over what you played, or did they say to you, well, okay, you can play that and that, but could you put a bit of that in as well? Or did they just say, you go for it and you play whatever you want?
It sort of, yeah. So the evening show was 7 till 9. Now, in radio, and you still get it now, but I mean, you used to get it back then as well. You had the playlist kind of set up. So you'd have your A-list tracks, your B-list tracks, and then maybe in the evening, they might kind of like a C-list or something. I mean, every radio station would have a slightly different setup for it. But, you know, the way they would rotate it is, you know, your A-list would generally be a small number of tracks. Let's say 10 or 11 tracks on the A-list, and you'd play 3 of those every hour. So that meant that every 4th hour, you're going to hear the same songs coming around again. So, you know, you got that thing. So they're your biggest songs at the moment. Your B list is a little bit longer, maybe a few less. So in other words, it takes longer for that to kind of circulate around during the day. Maybe those tracks get played twice a day or something, and that kind of thing. So XFM was no different in the sense that it had a playlist. And actually, before this, I dug out the playlist for the week that I started. So I can tell you a bit about that. But essentially, the way the playlist works, I can't remember exactly, but I would have been given 7 till 9 on a Monday night, let's say, and they would have said, right, in that, Steve, you got to play 3 A-list tracks, 2 B-list tracks, the rest of it's down to you. So yeah, so you'd have, so in an hour, what, you're going to get 13 or 14 songs in an hour, obviously depending on the length. So let's say about nearly half is playlisted and the other half is yours. Now, as you'd go, you know, you get to John Kennedy's show or Keith Cameron's show at night or whatever, and they would have been pretty much free choice. I think the playlist was stopped for them. So during the day, there'd be a higher rate of playlist tracks, and then as you got into the evening, it would kind of settle down a little bit. But do you want to know what was on the playlist? That fun?
I'd love to. Yeah, it's amazing you did that out.
So this was the playlist then. There's 22 on the A list and 12 on the B list. So this was the 9th of January, 1998.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So this is the week that I started. You've got on it Faith No More, Puff Daddy and the Family.
Really?
Who'd have thought? Yeah.
Who'd
have thought? So this is the days before he's P. Diddy. Yeah. He's got more vowels going on back then. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And this is these. I don't know if you remember. It's a great song actually. It's all about the Benjamins, and he did it with Dave Grohl. Because it was Dave Grohl, and I think Latyrix is on there and those kind of things as well. It's a really great track out there. Then there's a band called Wireless. Oasis is there, The Unbelievable Truth, Ian Brown, Warm Jets, Feeder, The Lilies, Gus Gus, I think they were Icelandic. One of my favourite bands, Asian Dub Foundation, were on there. Free Satpal Ram was on the A-list. Spiritualised, rugby band from just up the road from where I am now. Earl Brutus, Garageland, Propeller Heads, Bernard Butler, Stereophonics, High Llamas, Seafood, The Verve are on there. And then on the B list, you've got bands that I don't even remember. The High Birds, or Laptop are on there. Glitterbox, Marion. Remember Marion? They were kind of a sort of non-league Britpop band. Green Day, Carter, Dawn of the Replicants. The Blue Tones are on there as well. So you can see that was the playlist.
Very diverse. I'll be honest with you. I know about 20% of those people.
Half of that.
No, absolutely. And I think that's what's interesting about it is you kind of look back at the facts in a way, isn't it? And you kind of go, this has got the image of what it was, but that's the fact of it. So Puff Daddy's on there, Pearl Jam's on there, Oasis are on there, Stereophonics are on there. So some of the more kind of, I'd say, more mainstream stuff. And then kind of a whole range of indie bands that maybe shone brightly for sort of 6 months, 18 months or something, and then disappeared.
It's a really exciting time for music, and you must, like that 90s era, you must have seen so many incredible bands being, a young man in London and really embracing the culture, and clearly you're immersed in it in the station anyway. Who were some of your most memorable gigs?
Oh, there's some great gigs. I'll tell you my favourite story. I think my favourite XFM story was, do you remember the Brian Jonestown Massacre? They're still around now, Brian Jonestown. They were the band that were kind of like they were the main competition for the Dandy Warhols. They were kind of there's a great documentary which everybody should watch called Dig. Dig is about the Dandy Warhols versus the Brian Jonestown Massacre and kind of their history. But anyway, so the Brian Jonestown Massacre had come to London, probably maybe the first or second time they'd come and toured, and they come down, done a session, not for me but for somebody else, and I'd been around at the time, and they'd finished, and they said, right, we're going out, we want to go out in London or whatever, you've got to come with us, Steve. So, okay, I'll go with the band. So, let's do that. So jumped into the cabs or whatever they got there, and we headed down to this club that was somewhere in central London, and we get to the doors kind of queue there, and so we're the Brian Jonestown Massacre. We're from Portland, Oregon. That's where they're on. Portland, I think. Yeah. We want to come in, and they're like, we've never heard of you. And he said, we got this guy with us. And I said, Steve, it's Steve. Oh, Steve. What, Steve? XFM, Steve Taylor. Yeah, you can come in. And I was like, yeah, okay.
That's
perks of the job.
I got this really cool American band into a club. Yeah, nice little stories like that. I remember the Add N to X was another band who were kind of around that time, kind of electronic-y. I remember them phoning the studio when I was on air in Charlotte Street and saying, we've got our new track. Do you want to play it on the radio? And it's like, yeah, okay, just drop it in then. No, we're outside now. Look out the window. We're in the car across the road. We've got it. Do you want it? Yeah. So put a longest track on so I can run down the 2 flights of stairs and open the front door, take the kind of, I don't know, would have been a CDR or something off them, and go and play on the air. So it's great. You're able to say, Add N to X have just turned up outside. They're in the car. Here's the new single they've just finished making.
Just wouldn't have happened now, would it? Just would not happen now.
No, and that was quite a nice one. But
what was, because you've talked a lot about the playlist and you're so passionate about it as well, which is great to hear, but who sort of decided? Was it just down to Sammy Jacobs, like on a whim, what bands he fancied, or were there different people deciding? Because it's just interesting, you read out the playlist, it's so diverse. I wonder what mind thought of that.
A crazy mind. Essentially there was a playlist committee. So the way it worked, again, this would have been Fraser Lurie, fantastic fella, absolutely knows news music inside out, and he was the head of music for the original XFM. This is all before we went to Capitol. So essentially, he was the head of music, so he would chair the music playlist panel. So I was in the room, Gary Crowley, Claire Sturgis, Ian Camfield. There's a photo I've got of me sitting next to Ricky and Gary, and I'm pretty certain it was in a music committee, so they must have even let Gervais be on the music committee. Probably an error, but whether he might have just said, I'm coming
Stumbled in.
Yeah, I'm coming in regardless. So the daytime was what? Paul Anderson was doing breakfast when I got there. Gary Crowley, I love Gary Crowley so much.
He's huge, isn't he?
absolute national treasure. He was doing the mid-mornings. Claire, who I also love, was doing the sort of lunchtime show. Then Ian Camfield, who I can't abide. No, I speak to Ian I don't speak to I don't speak to him, but he's over in the States now doing his Ian Camfield thing. Ian and I are constantly at each other on social media. He had a real go at me the other day because Meatloaf died, and he never thought that I'd paid enough respect to the Bat Out of Hell album. Because I think I must have said to him at one time, yeah, it's all right, you know.
Yeah.
But he didn't like that, you know. He's also a fellow dancer. He loves Steely Dan as well. So because Ian Camfield, of course, did the rock show and all that kind of stuff. So Ian and I, we had a great relationship at XFM actually. Really, you know, so it always used to be on sort of similar times. I'll be on for anyway. So he did the afternoons. Then I did the early evening. Then it was Keith Cameron, who was an NME writer at the time, and a brilliant music journalist, still is. I think he writes for Mojo and stuff. He was in the evenings, and then John Kennedy at the end of the day.
Right.
Who's still
and that
there
was your
now?
kind of date up. Yes, he's the Ravens who can't leave the Tower of London. And he was there right when the station started, wasn't he? Right, the RSLs, the Reading Festival and everything, John Kennedy.
It's amazing longevity for one
astonishing
person and one.
Yeah, amazing. I think the playlist committee from memory was made up of the daytime folks. And Fraser was the kind of had the casting vote, if you like, you know. Because so we'd get this stuff and we'd play it and we'd have to go, you know, what do we reckon to it? Should it go on the playlist? Should it be A-list? Should it be B-list? Those kind of things. You know, so we had all those kind of strange kind of arguments because, you know, that came down to sort of what was the spirit of XFM? You know, was it the Blue Tones? Or was it this other stuff? And actually, it was a bit of both, you know. And so trying to kind of carve a playlist out of that was quite tricky. But but that's how it worked. Really, it was a sort of an anarcho-democratic syndicate.
I'm using that in the future life, an anarcho-democratic syndicate.
What was the culture at the station like? Certainly during those early days, because I've just got such a my imagination goes wild on what I want it to be, you know, just crazy.
Yeah, like I can't imagine
parties
Gervais being at a meeting. Like I can't imagine. Yeah. Like there's that. What was that like with?
Yeah.
With
So
Marcus?
I mean, it's kind of skipping around the edges of it. So Ricky Gervais, right? Okay. So he was, as you will know, he was the head of speech.
Yeah.
Just leave that one
That's
dangling there for a moment. Yeah. I mean, in itself, that wins the Turner Prize, doesn't it? So Ricky Gervais was head of speech. So my interactions with him during the week, if you like, because that's when he was doing his serious job, because he'd do his own show at the weekend. But he was during the day. He was part of. I'm guessing he was part of the management team. All of these things make no sense when you put the words together. But so essentially, he looked after the shows. I think from Gary Crowley through Claire, through Ian to me. I think that was it. So I think he was sort of the producer of all of those 4 shows. So during the day, or you know, if I was on, you know, if the door opened the studio a bit, you could guarantee you would hear his laugh somewhere in the building. You know, you kind of, you know that laugh he does, that kind of. You know. And so you'd always hear that. So he'd always be around, and you knew he was approaching because the laugh would be getting louder or whatever. And most of his time he was kind of just making sure everybody was having the greatest time. I think really. I think I've heard a lot of people talk about when he makes his TV shows and films and those kind of things, how he spends the entire time just making people laugh and trying to put them off, you know, and that's exactly what he did on the radio as well. So, you know, so he's head of speech, but, you know, that entailed sometimes me opening the microphone to do a link, which, you know, this is a sacrosanct moment in radio. If you open the mic, the red light goes on and everybody outside goes, careful. You know, the person on at the moment is about to do something absolutely astonishing. They're going to. So we need to make sure that nothing, you know, puts them off. And that would be Ricky's cue to come in and put you off. So, you know, I remember him coming in, he printed something off the internet, which was just disgusting, and thought it'd be good, you know, so here I am about to do a link. So, look, and you're in the middle of talking, and you're just confronted with this disgusting image of the internet. In the days when the internet was I don't know, is it more disgusting now than it was then? I don't know. But anyway, that Ricky's, if you like, the culture in the Charlotte Street days very much took its cue, I think, from not just from Ricky, because there was a lot of people there who really knew their music, really passionate about the music, lots of conversations about gigs, have seen what's going on, and those kind of things. But certainly Ricky, when he was in the building, which was most days because he was head of speech, was he kind of gave it that. He'd drop into shows. You start a link and he might kind of just join in the link or something. So he was always there. And I think as a listener, people would have kind of been waiting for Ricky to just kind of pop up. And of course, at that point, nobody knew who he was. I mean, he wasn't famous at that point before he'd done the 11 o'clock show in the office and all that stuff. So and Steve Merchant used to, I think, come in and do the show with him on a Saturday. And I don't think I ever met Steve at XFM.
Oh, really?
But actually, they did a Sunday. That would make sense because I did Saturday night. So I would have got down there and I would have seen, there was a football show. Tony Smith from Deceptive Records used to do. With Tim from a band called The Family Cat. So Ricky, I think, was on a Sunday morning, Sunday lunchtime, something like that, with Steve. And so I don't think I ever met Steve because he wasn't in during the week. They did that show, and it was probably the show that everybody at Your Director and really kind of was appointment to listen type stuff. So
that Series 0, we would like refer to that as kind of their pre-Carl days.
There's a lovely show, Steve, that we found earlier. It's like episode 7 of Series 1. I'm sure the listeners will know exactly what we're talking about. And you come into the studio just on a handover link. And Ricky's calling you the man with the knowledge, and he said that you look like Penfold from Danger Mouse.
Which you can see me now.
I confirm he does. I confirm it.
It's just a little bit older, Penfold with a beard.
So that lovely, that gentle teasing, though, it just totally sets the tone of what presumably that was like working with him.
I think the man with the knowledge thing became, because that was when we'd got to Capitol, because of course when the whole takeover happened, and we got called into the basement office at Charlotte Street, and Richard Park was sitting in state, at the bottom, because we've got this message. We got the message to you've all got to come in. So we all came in, and we were told to go downstairs. So we all went downstairs to the basement, and Richard Park from Capital Radio sitting in XFM. It's like he's, like he shouldn't be there, because it's kind of, it's like he's Capital Radio. He's smashing nicely. He's everything that we aren't. We're trying to kill him. We're trying to kill that radio. It's like Game of Thrones. It's kind of the I can't remember the names of the families now, but it was like he was like there, and it's kind of, hang on, what's he doing here? Because Capital Radio was the pop station, and we were anti-radio. That's the way I think that we kind of saw doing, a lot of us. I can't speak for everybody. It's my take on it, And so basically, he's there, and he just announced it. Says, we've bought you. He might well have said, that's it, we've won. So that day happened, and then for the next few months, where kind of all the sale went through and all that kind of stuff, it was gradually people having meetings down at Leicester Square or whatever, which is where the capital fortress was, and we were up on Charlotte Square. This is like Game of Thrones, isn't it? At North London kind of area. So and I remember Ricky going down for his meeting with Richard Park. Didn't end well because Ricky didn't get kept on. So. And there's Richard Park with his finger on the pulse of what's kind of culturally significant. So basically, that period was lots of people going and speaking to Richard at Capitol. I mean, I managed to stay on. They kept a few of us on, so myself and Claire and Ian, Paul Anderson, I think. But Gary Crowley, I think, got offered the middle of the night or something, and he said, "No, I'm not going to take that." And that's right, because Gary Crowley's daytime London. He's all what London's about,
Did you keep the same time slot Saturday?
No. So kind of what happened was I've been doing that evening show. Do you know what? It goes back again to that kind of professionalism thing, doesn't it? I think the fact that people like myself, Ian, Claire, because Claire had been at Radio 1, Ian had come up through, I think, country radio and places like that, really interestingly. And, we'd done radio on stations other than XFM. Of course, John Kennedy was kept as well. Of course, John was kept. But essentially, I think when we got there, I think what Richard Park was looking for, and to be fair to him, he's a really successful radio programmer, manager, whatever. He wanted a station which I think he saw as a rock station. I don't think he saw XFM as what we saw it as. He wanted people who could kind of do the corporate thing, I suppose, say the name of the station, do the advertising line, that kind of stuff. So when we first got there, I think I got given a Saturday night show, maybe something on Sunday. I only had the weekend. I got taken off the weekday, so that's where I could start going and do my academic stuff, basically.
Okay.
So essentially, we were given playlists. We didn't get to choose anything at all. They had this model, which I think was a model brought from Australian radio, because the guy they brought in as a program controller had come from Aussie radio, and it was like play 3 songs in a row, then speak, then play 5 songs in a row, then speak, 3 songs, then speak. And what they did as well, because I think they were thinking that this was kind of early days of, I don't know, iTunes or moving towards streaming or something. There was a sense in which they wanted you to play the entire song. So, you know how a track would start and then it would be sort of 3.5 minutes or something, and the last sort of 20 seconds is the fade. Yeah. They'd want you to play all the way to the end of the fade before you played the next track. And to me, that was, you know, to this day, I think it was just because somebody had this idea that, you know, if you were listening to sort of FM radio and it was like kind of rock radio, that it was like respect the music, man. Play the whole track and then the next one comes in. Whereas, of course, for me, the energy of music radio is talking over some of the music, not over, you know, you don't kind of talk over the 5-minute guitar solo of Freebird, but essentially, you know, you would play the whole track, and it took a lot of the energy away. Now, for about, I don't know, 6 months, XFM kind of turned into this like very kind of FM rocky type thing. Lots of complaints went into what was called the Radio Authority at that point, and they were told off. And they said, you know, you somehow lost the spirit of what XFM was. You need to look at your music policy again. You need to kind of, you know, move away from this kind of nonsense thing of kind of playing tracks all the way through. And that seemed to be the point where Ricky Gervais came back into the picture. Because I don't know exactly how it happened, but Ricky then we got a new program controller. We started putting there's some specialist shows started to emerge again. And so your daytime still stayed more corporate than it had been, but you then had more of these specialist shows. And that's where Ricky then did the show with Steve again. And that became, I think they were the first podcast, and that's where the whole, when I was doing the Man with the Knowledge stuff would have been at Capital Radio in Leicester Square, where we're doing those. So yeah, the original Ricky shows with Steve back at Charlotte Street, I don't know where they are. You know, I don't know. They might still be around.
I know there's like, because there's some of the what they call Series 0, which was just those two where they're kind of, you know, bonding, like clearly that in their infancy of their relationship, but obviously they went on to work with Carl. How did you meet Carl? How did you work with Carl?
Yeah,
people obviously is a huge figure for the podcast, and I think everyone loves Carl Pilkington.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, again, he's national treasure, isn't he? Again, so I think which people don't say about Ricky Gervais, do they? Say
yeah, that's true.
I'm not going to leave that there.
Do you want him as a national treasure or not? I don't know.
I think it possibly undermines the whole concept of national treasure. Ricky Gervais is one. It kind of changes the meaning of it in some strange way. Okay, so Carl Pilkington's interesting. God, there's so many interesting stories on it. So Carl Pilkington, when we moved to Capital Radio, so Carl wasn't part of XFM at Charlotte Street. Yeah, right. Never met him. Yeah. When we got to Leicester Square, he was one of the 2 producer, engineer, technical folk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was Carl and there was Ben, and they were both wonderful people, still are wonderful people. Now, Carl was the only person who would ever tidy up the studio. You know, so you'd
really,
you'd go through kind of like people drinking coffee and tea and on a burger wrappers and that kind of stuff. Carl would be the person who'd come in, put aside,
imagine that,
and go round the studio, pick up all of the detritus and chuck it in the bin. Yeah, without probably saying anything, and kind of probably being the person who kind of go, why can't these people just clear up after them? He used to do that, but much more than that, he was absolutely fantastic producer, engineer, audio tech, those kind of things. So I think he was involved with recording a lot of the live sessions, and he would do a lot of the kind of the advertising stuff and kind of editing and, you know, all of the stationality and station branding and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, was there to kind of, you know, fix problems and all this kind of stuff. So really, really fantastic, creative audio technician. Now, when Ricky and Steve did their show, Claire Sturgis used to do a lot of the sitting in, driving the desk, and they talked to Claire. I think Ian Camfield did it a few times. I did it a few times.
Oh, really?
And then, yeah. So, yeah, I think, I mean, I didn't do it very often. I probably did it 3 or 4 times. Because I had the show. Yeah. So I had the show that was kind of on after them. So it probably would have been one of those moments where Claire can't make it in today or something. So Steve, can you come in early and look after the kids? So there been that, and I think I probably in those shows maybe I spoke a couple of times, but I kind of just stayed in the background because I was kind of.
I'm not surprised. I would too.
So they probably did kind of goad me a couple of times, but then the other times they were goading me I would have been preparing my show, and they'd have seen me and said, "Steve Taylor's here, let's have a go at it." And then Carl then became the person that sat in the chair. Again, probably not intentional. The short straw. yeah, probably not intentional. Probably, Claire wasn't available, Ian wasn't, Steve not available. Let's get Carl. And that, of course, that's when Carl just kind of blossomed into this just amazing on-air personality that I don't think anybody really knew about. I don't know whether Ricky and Steve knew, and I know he had done radio as a presenter, I think, up in Manchester, but he'd clearly gone down a route in radio, which was like in the back room doing the technical side of it. So when he then became the main person in the studio with them, and they worked out just how brilliantly concise he could be, and just hilariously funny with the minimum amount of effort in many ways. Just fantastic. And I think everybody was blown away with how amazing he was. And of course, that's led on to all the other stuff he's done since. So yeah.
We've had opposing views on this. Do you think that Carl was desperate? Not desperate, as I say, but he really did deep down. He wanted to get on air and he wanted to present. That's not a bad thing if he did. Some people swear that, oh no, he didn't. It was entirely by accident and things. But do you think knowing him, do you think it was an ambition of his?
I think Carl would have been happy either way, because I think he was just somebody who's always kind of just comfortable doing what he's doing, and kind of just and a really kind of a person who really cared about radio, cared about people, cared about everything.
That's lovely.
Absolutely, one person. I think he would have been happy either way, because I think he had done, I don't know, you might know more than me, I think he had done some radio himself in Manchester. He probably must have thought, well, I might enjoy that, so I wouldn't mind doing it again. Now, I don't know whether he surprised himself with the combination with Ricky, because if you think about what he did, you wouldn't go on air yourself as an individual and do what Carl did, because it wouldn't work. No, he needed to bounce off what Ricky and Steve were doing, and they needed to bounce off what he was doing. So it was almost like a perfect kind of scenario of almost like a completely new genre of radio in many ways. You got that zoo format, but this wasn't a zoo format, was it? This wasn't Steve Wright and the afternoon tank or whatever. This was something entirely different. And but I don't know, to be honest. I think he probably enjoyed doing it, and I think as probably as surprised as anybody else that he suddenly became as massive and as national treasure-esque as he did. But I've not seen any of them, because I moved out of London and I'm kind of doing what I'm doing now as well. So I've seen them since they've all become these kind of absolutely mega stars. But Carl started off as that person who you'd want him on your side. Do you know what I mean? You'd pick him for any situation.
Do you listen to the shows, Steve, like the old podcast with Ricky, Steve and Carl?
I've listened back to a few of them, when you're on kind of Spotify and you're kind of just flicking around. And just kind of picks, because there's so many of them as well, isn't it? So kind of pick something out random and having a listen through to them. And they're still great, aren't they? Just listening back to them, absolutely amazing. There's something I wish I'd done, which was it's the old stuff actually at Charlotte Street, is that Ricky had made these adverts, these spoof adverts, and they were for new albums by kind of fictional artists, and I think he probably got Ian Camfield to voice a couple. I think he might have even got Tommy Vance to kind of voice a couple as well, actually.
That's hilarious.
The great TV.
How?
But I remember there's one I'm not going to say because it's just totally inappropriate. But there was another one which is still inappropriate, but not as inappropriate. I remember the band was called Velvet Nazi 666.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was kind of, and their new rock album was called something or other, I don't know, but they were. Imagine Tommy Vance's voice going Velvet Nazi 666.
I think you can find them actually on series.
Oh, maybe they're there. I'll have to dig those out.
They're honestly, I think they're called like Muff Shandy or something like. It's fucking ridiculous. He does another one where this is when the Spice Girls break up, where Jerry leaves, and they do the Spice Girl like support hotline. And,
I've not heard that one. Yeah.
I'll send it to you. It's brilliant. Yeah, it's just.
Oh, Silence of the Lambs one. Have you heard that one?
I haven't heard these.
No,
I'll send them to
we
you.
Can't talk about that one. Yeah.
Oh, why? No, now I want to talk about it. I thought you can say we can cut it out.
I think it's just a very loud noise, as I recall, in the background of something liquidy. Whilst the character is meeting. Yeah, for the first time or whatever. But I just, so he obviously did some film stuff. But all of those, I mean, it would be great if they were, I mean, maybe they are collected somewhere. I don't know. You'll have to tell me if you find them somewhere. But yeah, they were great. And they were all from that kind of early days. Because I don't know if he could have got away with that once it became Capital. I'm not sure. Might have just that a little bit too much. Because, of course, remember, XFM got told off, didn't they, by the radio authority when Tom
the
Binns.
cock incident. Oh,
it was the pig insemination, or so I can't remember who it was now, but it was Tom Binns. I don't know what Tom's doing now, but he was kind of a stand-up comedian that they took on as a breakfast show presenter for about a year or so, and I think he did something. They got into trouble for that one, I remember, but that wasn't even Ricky Gervais getting into trouble for that.
That's amazing. Seriously, the things he did get away with, the things we heard in the show, series 1, 2, 3, after it was Capital. I mean, well, God knows what it was like before it was Capital, if that's what he's like.
Exactly.
I mean, I can't imagine.
What was it? How was XFM viewed among your contemporaries, the other radio stations? Because we spoke to Andrew Phillips as well, and it seemed like you guys were just
lovely Andrew.
He was a great guest, and but it seemed like you were almost like the guilty pleasure, the sort of filthy secret that even Radio 1 jocks were kind of like, what? Sorry, we're listening to XFM. It's always seen as you guys were the naughty school children at the back of the class, almost.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a clamour, wasn't there, for people to get onto XFM because. Oh God, this is terrible. When first of all, I forget so many people that were on there who are now like major stars.
But so many people started there, didn't they?
Oh, they did. Well, they started there, or they were already established, but they wanted to. It's a bit like we're on the third album and we don't know what to do. We want to be different. Let's go and get Steve Albini in to produce it and give it that kind of dirty Albini kind of feel, and then we'll be cool again. Yeah, and I think it was a bit like that. So I remember people like Zoe Ball, of course, came to work for XFM. And Dermot O'Leary came to work for XFM.
That's just astonishing.
And we, I remember Jimmy Carr was there, and Simon Pegg did a show.
Russell Brown.
All of that. There was a whole stack of it. It sucks. One of my favourite things. One of my favourites. I was doing for a while. I was doing the mid-morning show. So I'd be doing sort of the mid-mornings or something. And I remember I must have had the show as mine because I was covered. And they said, right, Steve's away. We're going to get in. Suggs to cover him. And I remember thinking, Suggs from Madness is covering
you. Yeah.
What kind of weird world is this? So they'd have all these people coming in doing stuff, and that's before you get to the sort of the takeovers and the hijacks and people coming down to do those things as well. But so I think going back to the question, I think a lot of people were wanted to get involved. So I think, somebody like Dermot, again, fantastic fella Dermot. But I think it always get the impression with people like Dermot and Zoe and people like that they were, I got the impression that when they were on XFM, they'd do the show and I'd see them after they'd done or something like that, and I'd be on next because it was always the weekend and I was usually doing a Saturday afternoon, Sunday, something like that. And I'd say, really great show. And they go, do you think so? Do you think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they were kind of like, they felt like they didn't know the music and they were at XFM. And it was a bit it wasn't the usual stuff they were known for. They were used to doing the pop stuff and the X Factor and those kind of things or whatever. So I think they always had that kind of feeling of, we love this station. It is actually, we do know the music really, but they kind of think they always worried that they weren't coming across as if they fitted, when of course they were fine. They were great professional presenters, and that. So Lauren Laverne, of course, did a show at XFM as well. And of course, when I worked at Kicks 96 when I was a youngster doing that, I interviewed Kinnicky, and I found them really difficult to interview. It was one of those interviews where I did the interview, and after thank God that's over. Blimey, yeah. And then of course a few years later, Lauren Laverne then is like, she's no longer just like in Kinnicky, she's now like this kind of cultural icon.
She is. Desert Island Discs now.
Exactly. Yeah,
massive.
Again, magnificent. So that was kind of a weird thing. So loads and loads of people coming through, kind of great musicians and kind of those great comedians. I wish Simon Pegg had done some more stuff as well, because
I've heard those shows. They're fantastic. Really funny.
And I'm sure I'm missing people. Russell Brand got taken on at one point. Russell
taken off again quite quickly.
Yeah, Russell Brand. Oh, here we go. Okay, let's try and stay on the side of not slander, not libel. So got taken on by the aforementioned Andrew Phillips. Now, Russell Brand at that point had been doing MTV. And I think that was all. I don't know if he was known for anything else. I think it was MTV, and I think there were some salacious stories about him at MTV. But people should look those up themselves. But anyway, so he came to. He said, "We've got this entertainment at XFM," and he came in one night, and I was doing like an evening show or something like that. And he came in so that I could show him how to use the desk. Yeah, because I was on air, and it's like, go and see Steve. Steve will show you. Yeah. So anyway, he came in, and I tried to show him stuff, but he didn't seem to be taking it in. And I remember we had a radio presenters meeting. We were all sitting around his table, and we were talking. I don't know what we do. Didn't have many of these at all. Actually, Andrew was chairing it. So Russell's there, and we're all talking about, I don't know, stuff, music, playlists, shows. I don't know. And then suddenly out of nowhere, Russell Brown says, "Hey, would it be okay if, because it'd be really cool, wouldn't it, everybody? If, during the news, you can just like turn the mic up and start commenting on the news, going, oh, that's shit, innit? Yeah. And everybody's looking at him thinking, what?
Right. Yeah.
What? And so I think Andrew probably batted that away and kind of, yeah, that's an interesting idea, Russell. Anyway, so back to, what we're talking about. Yeah. And of course, it's not lost on me that I was the person that showed Russell Brand how to use a radio desk when, I don't know, 2 or 3 years later, he's embroiled together with Jonathan Ross in the Andrew... Andrew Sachs, that's it, the Andrew Sachs incident, which appears to be based on people not knowing properly how to use a radio desk. So, do you know what I'm saying here? There's a line that probably goes all the way back to me, and I'm possibly to blame. Because, if I'd shown him better, don't put that fader up. Put that fader up.
Yeah, but he wouldn't be as big as he is now, I don't think, without that incident. I think that kind of gave him a bit of an edge in an XFM kind of way. And he went in a different direction. And I'm not saying I like him or not now, but he's pretty huge. I reckon that incident was part of that. So actually, he owes you some money.
Well, I think there's a few debts that you could call then. Yeah. But but he wasn't, as you say, he wasn't there for long. He did about 4 or 5 weeks, I think, and that was it. But it was enough. And as I say, there's a hell of a list of people who were involved with XFM over the years. Really is quite astonishing. I've probably missed out some really, really big people as well. So apologies to them if I forgot.
No, that's okay. That's really interesting to get these little.
Of course, the best people at XFM were, Claire Sturgis, John Kennedy, Ian Campfield. These were the true troopers that went through the whole thing. They were those soldiers.
The latter few years of your life, the last 5-10 years, have been spent in academia. You're a lecturer. You also wrote a book, the A to Z of the A to X of.
Oh yeah, get the branding right.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
plug that.
do you prefer that life now, or why did you make that transition? What appeals? Because it's kind of, I guess, being a lecturer must be like a bit like a radio host in a way that you're projecting, you're speaking to people all the time. So.
Yeah, you've nailed it there, actually, in a way. Actually, it's kind of like I can't get on the radio anymore. So actually, I'm just going to have got people captive in a room, and they're quite young, and I can kind of influence their minds. And so, no. I mean, it's so the book, first of all, I did while I was at XFM. So hence the A to X. Because that was the show. That's what I called the show. So the main specialist show that I did was called the A to X of alternative music. And it went out for, I don't know, 5 years, something like that. And it moved around the schedule a little bit, but it tended to be on a Saturday night or a Sunday night. It might have been on a Friday night at some point. But essentially, I did it on a weekly basis. So that was my show. That was my baby, that show. So that was the one where I could do it however I wanted. And again, thank you. I think it was Andrew Phillips who gave me that show. So what it was a 3-hour show. And I tried to bring together new music with the old stuff. So I would go through the alphabet, essentially. So I'd start show 1 or whatever would have been, right, okay, we're starting with a certain ratio. And I would do sort of a 1.5 minute, 2-minute kind of potted history of a certain ratio in a kind of, scripted kind of slightly DJ things. I wasn't reading out. It was kind of a bit of a blend of different things there. And I would go, okay, a certain ratio, blah, 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 started here. This is who they were. This is the key stuff you've got to listen to. Here's a couple of things that happened to them along the way. Right, I'm going to play you this track by a certain ratio, and then it go into a track and I play it. Yeah. And then I'd do some other stuff and I'd little features and those kind of things. And then it'd be like, right, the next inductee, if you like, is AC/DC. Yeah. And again, straight away, you're controversial because AC/DC alternative, what on earth is he talking about? But of course, AC/DC are alternative. They've done the same thing for 400 years with just 2 chords.
The status quo of rock, of alternative rock.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, it's the misconception, isn't it, that alternative and successful can't be synonymous. Alternative can be success, like commercial success.
No, absolutely. And that was, I mean, because in a way you can make an argument and say that ABBA were alternative. Because if you think about what was going on in Sweden when ABBA formed, ABBA was all about really kind of folk music that was political. And ABBA come along and go, no, we're going to do pop music, which is apolitical. You go, well, that's pretty alternative for Swedish culture. So, so it depends on how you view the world, isn't it? So essentially, I did this show that had all those kind of features in it, and it ran for ages, and I got all the way through to Z, and I probably finished with ZZ Top just for the hell of it because it's C and C. And actually, come on, let's face it, Top were pretty cool at times. Yeah. So I did this whole thing, and it gave me a chance to play all sorts of different tracks. So the idea was, okay, Steve, this has run for a long time. This actually a book would be good, wouldn't it? So I said, fantastic. So I said, yeah, I'd love to do a book. So I then did this book, which is still available. You can get it for probably
Amazon available.
Amazon, you ain't get it for and so anyway, and in it, I chose a bunch of artists, and I wrote up the sort of thing I'd have done on the radio as a script, but I kind of did it in a bit more writerly style. And the idea was that I picked artists that could be defined as alternative in some way, and I kind of said, right, it was going to be about how they've engaged with the business. The sort of thing that they've done, whether it's musically, lyrically, or whatever, is different, but they also had to be able to connect with an audience that understood as well. So I left out some of my favorite artists. I left out Leonard Cohen and Joni Mitchell and people like this because to me, they were independent and they did their own thing artistically, and magnificent artists, but they weren't alternative, because to me, alternative meant you had to be connected to the culture, not just sitting alongside it doing your own thing. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Doing your own thing is dead cool. But alternative to me was something that was connected to and would push things forward. So, somebody would come along and say, right, we can see what's going on, but we're going to do this and it's going to be slightly different, blah, blah, blah. So that was it. So the book came out of that. And I suppose in a way that started then kind of segue into what I was doing academically. So I did do some stuff where I wrote up a little bit of stuff around XFM. I went to work for University of West London, which was then called Thames Valley University when I joined it. So when I was doing the show, I was also doing the lecturing during the week. I was teaching radio, I was teaching cultural theory and all those kind of things. And we set up a radio station actually at Ealing, in the Ealing Film Studios. So we had student radio shows, which is great. And I'd do a show on there every now and again as well, whilst I was still doing the XFM thing. Worked there for a good 10 years in Ealing. Then I moved to University of Northampton, where I became a deputy dean of the School of the Arts, which was kind of very grown up. And in my kind of grown upness, I tried to still retain that kind of slightly indie ethos. So when we were at Northampton, I managed to get honorary degrees for Jar Wobble and for Bill Drummond. So Jar Wobble, magnificent bassist from Public Image Limited or whatever. He's still around now. Go and see Jar Wobble. If you've never seen Jar Wobble play live, go and see him. Just the greatest night out. We brought in Alan Moore to speak to the students as well. Alan Moore's the guy who wrote The Watchmen and V is for Vendetta and all those kind of things.
Wow.
Gentlemen, all those great films that Alan Moore despises, because even though he wrote the graphic novels that they're based on, he never wanted them turned into films. So great. I always tried to kind of bring in people to talk to students and get involved who are themselves left field, let's put it that way. So I've always tried to, what I'd like to think is where I've been involved in being able to put stuff in front of students, whether that's as a lecturer or now as a kind of an academic manager, as a dean or whatever, is actually to try and stay a little bit true to that, a little bit further, so in terms of bringing some of that stuff together. Where I am at the moment in Warwickshire, we're in Leamington Spa, which hardly anybody in the country knows is the centre of the games industry in the UK. It's actually known as Silicon Spa, and all of the major games companies are based in Leamington Spa.
Aren't they?
Sega, Playgrounds, Ubisoft, and then a whole stack of indies. So when I look at the games industry in Leamington, I look at the games industry and I see the music industry of the 80s or 90s. I go, okay, hang on a second. You've got the major corporates, but you've got these little indies where the real creativity is happening. And that's just like, the indie labels post-punk that, were kind of bought up by the corporates,
But they are now, literally they are, but they're all being hoovered up. Look at the recent sales that have gone through. Gaming's just bonkers industry now, isn't it?
It is. That is the culture now, isn't it? And I think now if I was you know, for me, it was always about music, and that was the thing. And I think it still is to an extent. It's still there, isn't it? But it's now, I think if you look at, you know, Gen Z or whatever, I think, you know, games culture and being online and all of that side of things is probably kind of the edge of culture in some way now, in a way that music sort of isn't as much.
Do you think that's why you gravitated towards Leamington Spa, just in general, you know, where you work, that sort of area, because of that indie culture, even though it's not in the field you have?
Probably not, to be honest. It's kind of like, you know, I was aware of it because of living in the area or whatever, but, you know, having got there, it's very much a kind of a, right, okay, there's an interest. You know, one of the first things I wanted to do was to kind of chat to some of the people who are in this sector, and we ended up putting a conference together, and, you know, we've just trying to kind of celebrate a little bit more and kind of pull out, because, you know, you walk through Leamington and it's kind of, you know, there's these big buildings on the parade in the centre of Leamington, and they're, you know, behind a lot of them, they're little games companies, you know, so, you know, above a shop, you know, there'll be some offices, and that's where they're working, you know, and you know, it's quite amazing actually to think that is all sort of hidden away. I mean, there's, you know, there's other areas, but I mean, a lot of our students who study the games arts course that we have at Warwickshire College and University Centre, as we're known.
Course is now open.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you on time UCAS applications have closed, but you could still apply through UCAS Extra and then in clearing. But no, essentially you know, all of our students generally go from that course into jobs in the Leamington Spa area, working in games companies, you know, and so it's still there. I think that kind of independent spirit type thing is still there in culture, and still there in the arts and these kind of things, and it moves around. I think it's been in music for decades and decades and decades, and it's still there, and there's still great music being made. You know, there's still fantastic artists. I mean, I don't do as much of it as I used to, because obviously I've kind of, you know, it's finding the time to do it. But every year, for example, I go to the Green Man Festival in
I'd love to go
Wales.
to the Green Man Festival.
It's the best. It's the best, you know. I mean, I've been to every other festival, so I'm being a bit, you know, kind of presumptuous there. But yeah, I go every year, and I have been going now for a good 15 years or whatever, maybe longer. And I love it because it means that, you know, when the lineup gets announced, and quite often, you know, there's a bunch of artists who I know and I'm excited about. So this year, Green Man is being headlined by Kraftwerk.
Oh, brilliant.
That's pretty cool, isn't it? Kraftwerk in a field in Wales.
That's going to feel
doesn't make much sense, does it? But, you know, but Low are playing, Metronomy are playing, Kiwanuka's playing, you know, there's some really good people playing there as well. But the whole stack of artists that I've not heard of. And, you know, and so that's great. So I know I can kind of wander around for 3 days drinking overpriced drink and eating overpriced food, which is magnificent. But also kind of getting my shot of kind of great music all in one place. So if I pick one artist, for example, at the moment, who I'm absolutely crazy for, who actually played Green Man 2 years ago, is an artist called Aldous Harding. Who's originally from New Zealand. She lives in Wales now, but go and check out Aldous Harding. I mean, she's an absolutely amazing artist. You know,
there's one artist that I do want to get your professional muso opinion.
Oh God, don't ask that.
Because Gary and I are obviously you lived in basically the time I wanted to live, which is like the peak of the 90s with Britpop. But we're both huge Britpop fans. I'm Blur, Gary's Oasis, and I wanted to get your opinion on Oasis.
I could just tell the way you shook your head.
It comes up every single show, Gary and I. That is like, we'll go out for some drinks. We'll always end with an Oasis sing along. But Gary actually got me into them because I hated them originally. Couldn't stand it. I thought they were just populist rubbish. Really ordinary basic songs, but now my appreciation is more deep. Anyway, what do you think of Oasis? And don't break our heart either.
Can I say pulp?
You can say pulp. You can be the pulp.
I think I'm trying to think if it's changed over the years. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because to me, I mean, you know, Blur were just an also ran baggy band, weren't they? You know, that was it. You know, so when There's No Other Way, She's So High, that kind of stuff came out.
Yeah.
They at the time, they did okay, but they weren't up there with, you know, the Roses and the Mondays and the Charlatans and Spiral Carpets and that kind of stuff. You know, it was sort of, there's this other band and they're sort of from London-ish or the South. And if they're from the South, they can't be proper baggy because they're all from the North, you know. And that. So I think that, and then of course Blur sort of famously went away, didn't they? And they kind of came back then with the Modern Life is Rubbish album, where they sort of brought back that whole kind of mod 60s ethos didn't they?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it didn't sound particularly mod, let's face it, but the kind of, you know, it had that kind of, there was a certain ethos to it. And that's where I think people started paying attention again. I think Modern Life is Rubbish is a brilliant album. And then of course, after that, then became Part Life, and great. Part Life is, I was listening back to it the other day, and Part Life, I think, still stands up really well. Really interesting stuff on there. Now, Oasis, I remember Oasis. I was kind of against Oasis when they first broke through, because I hadn't discovered them.
Gary's leaning forward now.
It's always annoying when you haven't just, you know, think, where did this band come from? I wasn't aware of them. And surely people should have like contacted me and phoned me or something and told me, hey, this is band. So no, they sort of seem to come out of nowhere. And I remember them being on the front of you know, was it Enemy or something like that. And that first album though definitely made me, again, when you listen to it, it's a big heavy album, isn't it? You know, it's I think somebody described it as, it kind of sounds like you know, you're underneath an aeroplane and it's landing or something. You know, it's big. There's a big sound. All that kind of, you know, the kind of the extraneous. And those extraneous like little studio microphone noises, which are quite loud and kind of, you know. So I really like the first Oasis album. But for the second album, I think at that point, my natural kind of, everybody loves them, I must therefore not love them, because everybody loves them, kicks in. And so I probably didn't give the second album its due, but I did love Don't Look Back in Anger, and I still think that's one of the greatest songs of the 90s. Brilliant.
Miles Teller. No, that's it.
Wonderwall annoyed me, because I saw the video so often that it kind of started to annoy me. And then after that, I must admit, I kind of didn't really bother much with Oasis. Those first two albums were the albums for me. Blur lasted that a little bit longer. But that's kind of true of some of the others, like Radiohead. You know, great. You know, first album, Pablo Honey, okay. Second album, The Bends, magnificent. Then you get OK Computer, even more magnificent than The Bends. And then you get Kid A, and you go, this is going in a really interesting direction. But then after that, do you know what? I've kind of gone,
do you know, like Newton, like but, In Rainbows and stuff?
Yeah, it's all right. It's okay. So, but I don't know. I don't know whether I do like it, but I don't know. I do this thing as a guy. I just the final plug, because I know that I've taken time. There's a guy called Richard Shaw. Richard Shaw on Twitter, and I'm going to give him a plug because he's made my life wonderful for the last couple of years during lockdown. He created this hashtag, which is 5 albums and then a year, and every 2 weeks he picks a different year. So at the moment, so, you know, when I come off here, I'll be going straight back into 1976, because he's doing hashtag 5 albums 76, right? He's just done 2003 for the last 2 weeks. So what happens is everybody who's kind of following that hashtag then has to, for the next 2 weeks, live in 1976, listening to all of the albums that came out in 1976 and choosing their top 5. So then they choose the top 5. I go with 10, and do you know what? I've got a spreadsheet. That's how sad it's got. Yeah.
No, that's
because I thought if I'm going to do this, if I'm dedicating all of this time, I've got to put a spreadsheet together. So basically, you know, he's doing 1976 at the moment. I'm listening through to that. I think, what are my top 5? And then you tweet them on a Friday night, and then he closes it on Sunday morning. He then spends the rest of the day counting up, giving the person who came first gets 5 points, and then down to 1 point for 5th, and then he works out which is the best album from that year based on all of these people and of course every 2 weeks more and more people are getting involved, so you should definitely get involved. And the reason I tell that story, because the original fantastic, first of all, it's great fun because it makes you listen to albums in a structured way. You say, I haven't listened to the third Hot Chocolate album. I better go back and check it out. You know, what a terrible gap in my knowledge. But essentially, things like Blur have come up. So I think Part Life won for me in would have been 95?
95.
Yeah, 95. That's right. I think it did win. I could check my spreadsheet, but I think it did win when I went through. And was Oasis? It was the same. Was it the same? It was the same year, wasn't it? Because it was the whole. No, it was the second.
What's the story? Morning Glory. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that would have. I'm not sure it made my 10.
Well, you like.
Sorry, Gary.
You said don't look back in anger, right? You said that.
That though is that's immaculate. That's immaculate. The greatest thing of the 90s is probably Common People, though. That's the one.
Well, that's good as well. But it's just like white noise, apart from you saying you love don't look back in it. No, I'm only kidding. Wow, you certainly know a lot about music.
All you said was Blur Oasis. I'm sorry I did 20 minutes on
that. No, we loved it. Honestly, that was because Steve Taylor, I would say, probably best storyteller we've had on.
It's
But
just
Certainly
find a
most
better
bloated,
storyteller.
unnecessary storyteller.
But
Yeah.
I like those. I like those details. You know, they're good. Yeah, they've been fantastic. So, well, go on then, Blur or Oasis. You've got to come down one side. I think you come down Blur. You already said. We'll round it off.
I'm Blur. Damon has let me down recently with the whole kind of Taylor Swift thing. That was unnecessary.
Oh,
Damon
yeah.
He shouldn't say that.
He shouldn't have said it, and I think he knows he shouldn't have said it. And I think he is a very cool dude. It's totally out of character.
And he still looks the same as he did in the 90s. He's such a beautiful man.
Yeah, he's definitely got that, you know, and you know, the gorilla stuff. Oh, that was the Graham Coxon. I love the fact when Graham Coxon was interviewed and Damon Albarn had done the whole kind of gorillas thing, and they asked him about Damon's new project, and he said, "What, the banana splits?" Which is, if you're young, you don't get it. But banana splits were like these puppet characters that were on television in the 1970s. I thought Graham Coxon's put down of the gorillas being the banana splits, I thought was excellent.
Cool.
No, this has been, I really enjoyed talking to you today. And I just wanted to ask just one last question, which was, obviously you were in the radio business, you worked really hard, you've done all the shifts of all the different slots. What would be your advice to anyone who's like looking to get into radio now, even like kind of a entry level, or what would be your advice?
Number one piece of advice,
because we both love radio, but and obviously
we've been in it. We've done community radio.
Yeah, we've done things like
that. We haven't done.
I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, go and find an inebriated man leaning at the bar and talk to him.
That's scary.
Or let him talk to you. No. I think what you're saying, actually, I think actually getting involved with doing radio, whether it's community radio, student radio, or podcasting, as what you're doing now. Actually, I mean, I think the way you've both put this together today. I mean, it's kind of really relaxed interview style and all those kind of things. It's kind of, and also it gives you, the podcast, it gives you so much. You've got so much scope, haven't you, to be kind of free form, and so actually, some of those old rules of radio, actually, this is in many ways better than some of the radio that you listen to during the day, isn't it? Because I mean, some of those links they're not even there in the studio. Let's face it.
Yeah, exactly.
When I hear, if Smooth Radio has been left on in the car, they're saying, "Oh, Kate Garraway's on next." I'm thinking, I'm sure Kate Garraway's currently on the television.
Who wants this to Kate Garraway?
But essentially, I think the advice is, just like people who want to be journalists, I suppose, in the past as well, is kind of like get your own stuff out there and try and get it in front of people, isn't it? That's the thing. But because I'm not in the radio industry at the moment, I'm not sure the best way of doing that. I think it's about getting the podcasts out there, and maybe it's about kind of the subtlety of finding those radio shows, of which there aren't many on radio. So John Kennedy's show springs to mind, for example, where there's still and making sure that you're kind of a regular sort of contributor in some way to that. So you kind of you can kind of make a connection with somebody who's kind of got that link, who's doing stuff, and see where there's opportunities to pick up, I suppose, placements and those kind of things, isn't it? Through getting to be part of the gang around those shows. That's that's to do this kind of radio. To do radio where you are kind of playing the playlist and you're kind of the voice, who's kind of doing the selling the products in between or whatever. I think that's more about kind of going through kind of, I suppose, kind of the whole kind of performance and theatre route now, probably. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of people who are, I'll do radio as part of my career. That's the brand. But I think what you're doing is kind of a bit more, it's honest radio. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it suits us.
Something,
the pay isn't as good.
No, it's being paid for it, isn't it? That's the problem. It's being paid for, I suppose. Because I think what you're currently doing with a podcast like this is you're already doing the radio that should be on the radio anyway.
Whoa.
So the only reason you'd want to be on the radio is to get somebody to give you some money for it.
Well, do you know the only reason we want to be on radio is because you started it all with XFM, and I think XFM has kind of filtered down into the podcasting land. So we're hugely thankful for your contribution to XFM and the massive influence that it's had today.
And thank you so much for kind of inviting me on, because it's just been great to just chat.
Absolutely.
We've loved it. No, we've loved it. We've loved it, Steve. Honestly, he loves music. He hates Kate Garraway.
Yeah.
I'm joking. He doesn't really. But yeah, Steve, any last words before we go? We're going to have you on again, whether you like it or not. So
see how this one goes. You get any responses? Don't put him on again. What the hell are you talking about?
We might get listeners for once.
Yeah, so no, I don't think there's any last words. I don't know. Where's the?
It's not like a funeral, really. It's a strange question to ask, isn't it? Last words.
Well, you never know. In a couple of weeks' time, it might be that I'm kind of, I'll suddenly disappear.
If you remember,
that was his last work. That was his last. That was it. He did all this, and there was a whole load when he wasn't doing radio or anything like that. And suddenly he was back on this, then he died. So
destroyed your reputation. This will.
Yeah.
That's
or buy my book. There you go. That'll do.
Yeah.
We will.
Every time I sell it, I make 4 pence. I think so.
Really? 4 pence, as much as that?
No. Absolutely, no. It's been absolutely no. I really enjoyed it. It's been a great. I was going to say what time we're doing it, but that would destroy the magic of radio. And the kind of so it's been a great whatever time you're listening to it. We've had so yeah, fantastic.
No, you're a pleasure, and you're such a good storyteller. Thank you, Steve.
So that was Steve Taylor, Xfm DJ / presenter. Yeah.
I was pressed the start record before I was on air. That's a golden rule. We said we'd never do that.
I will break all of the rules in podcasting to get exposure.
Yeah, Steve was a pleasure. He's a lovely man, and also very so knowledgeable and very good speaker, interesting speaker. And he's so keen, to speak about it. I think.
So I hope you got a really new perspective on like life behind the scenes at XFM and just the music scene at that time, which I think you and I would absolutely love to be a part of.
Oh yeah, I like all those bands. No, as someone who's like a Philistine when it comes to music art, I'm kind of I was in awe of him. Just going through these bands. Oh yeah, he can link like 12 bands to one band, modern band, to say, oh, they're like this. So
do check out his book, and I'll put some links so you can find out a bit more about Steve into the description. But I thought just before we go, I'd like to wrap up with a little bit of XFM in the community. And Gary, if you check the chat of our Zoom, we have got a recent correspondence that I have been forbidden to read out, and you'll find out why if you check. Yeah. So if you're able, in your best voice, just enunciate every syllable, as much as you can.
Okay. Lorena, aka Albers. Hello. Please have the other guy, not Miles, read my email out on your next podcast, please. Listen, I love Miles, but it seems like the other little fella on the show doesn't do much.
That's true enough.
Anyway, I'm still catching up and finishing up with the garlic bread episode. You two are mental and keep talking over each other. We do. Every time this happens, I hear myself say, all right, move along, wanting to break it up. I'm the one that sounds like a mental basket. Mental basket, is that a term? It is now. Anyway, really love your podcast. Keep up the good work. Cheers. No, I'm American here, and I don't actually say cheers. So yeah, see ya. Hugs and extra kisses.
Hey,
oh, there you go.
An extra kiss.
No. So I can't tell you. Oh, you hang on. You are American. You are. So you are American. Oh wow. Thank you, Lorena. What a lovely name. What a horrible email, but what a lovely name. Why would you draw attention to that? No, I'm joking. That's fine. I mean, that's more than I get out of bed for usually, because I do not read emails out on this show, and I can't be bothered.
He's not allowed.
I'm not interested. And Miles, no, it's just a good way of doing it. Miles does it.
Yeah. We know that.
Thank you, Lorena. No, I'm just making a point.
Yeah, all right.
But no, I did enjoy reading that out. And I'll tell you what, Lorena, if you email something in each week, I'll read it out, and it'll be the special one that I'll read.
Maybe not too much, though, because we don't want to break the flow too much.
Oh, don't. You said that earlier to me. What are the bollocks? One of us is going to break the flow.
Anyway, guys, it's been a pleasure. Great. Thank you, Steve, again. And do make sure you like, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and email us in your XFM in the communities at spinnerspodcast@gmail.com, or on Twitter, that's Spinners Podcast. And we look forward to coming back with our regular show next week, where we're reviewing the next episode. Can't remember what it is, but I'm sure it will be brilliant.
Episode 9, Series 3. And buy Steve's book. We'll put a link to the Amazon.
All that. Yeah. All right. Well, what are we saying now?
No, that's it. Oh, okay.
Treat someone. I should also say, treat someone. If you've got a loved one, do treat them to a Patreon subscription where you can get loads more Miles and Gary content, because I'm sure that's what they'd want.
Yeah, if you're married to a completely mental basket. That's it. Don't nod at me.
I'm trying to say you to say goodbye.
I know. I said goodbye. I said goodbye. I said hello. Goodbye. Okay. See you next week. Darlings.